The 2025 Formula One season has already delivered edge-of-your-seat action, but nothing could have prepared fans, or the paddock, for the explosive fallout after the Miami Grand Prix. What should have been a celebration of McLaren's remarkable return to form has instead spiraled into a whirlwind of suspicion, allegations, and official probes that could cast a long shadow over one of the sport's most impressive performances in recent years. Oscar Piastri's dominant triumph on the sun-drenched streets of Miami, paired with McLaren's jaw-dropping 30-second lead over the nearest rival, didn't just raise eyebrows, it ignited a five-alarm controversy. Whispers in the paddock quickly evolved into full-blown investigations as speculation swirled about a possible banned innovation lurking within the seemingly untouchable MCL39. Within hours, McLaren found itself at the epicenter of a storm that felt more like a high-stakes espionage thriller than a Formula One weekend. Fueling the fire? Alleged thermal images, unconfirmed accusations, and the ever-present backdrop of bitter team rivalries. The FIA, dragged once again into the spotlight, now faces the task of dissecting what could be one of the most contentious technical disputes in years. And just when it seemed the drama had reached its peak, McLaren CEO Zak Brown threw gasoline on the flames. Metaphorically, of course, by appearing in the paddock holding a water bottle labeled "Tire Water." No statement. Just a prop, a jab, a wink, and possibly a provocation. If you live and breathe F1, you'll want to stick around. This isn't your average post-race debrief. This is a full-on exposé. We're going deep, unraveling layer by layer the events that followed the most talked-about race of the season. Let's rewind and start with the facts. The 2025 Miami GP wasn't just another victory, it was a seismic shockwave. McLaren didn't just win, they dominated. Oscar Piastri delivered a performance for the ages, crossing the finish line far ahead of the field. Lando Norris came in second, completing a sensational 1-2 for the Woking outfit. The rest? Nowhere in sight, trailing by a staggering half a minute. In an age where performance convergence has shrunk gaps between teams to mere tenths of a second, a 30-second margin is not only unusual, it's borderline unbelievable. And in Formula One, when something looks too good to be true, it usually invites scrutiny. Sure enough, the FIA was knocking on McLaren's door before the champagne had even gone flat. Their focus? An alleged illegal component hidden deep within the brake system of the MCL39, a part potentially responsible for the team's astonishing rear tire preservation and pace consistency. Dominant cars have always attracted suspicion. It's part of the sport's DNA. But this time, it got personal. The investigations aren't just about engineering. This feels like an all-out political and psychological war. The true puzzle? McLaren's exceptional tire management on a street circuit notorious for chewing up rubber. While rivals struggled with degradation, McLaren's rear tires held strong, lap after punishing lap. To many rival engineers, it didn't add up. In a field where marginal gains are measured in thousandths, McLaren had seemingly found a golden bullet. That's precisely why Red Bull's antenna went up. A car that fast, that stable, and that gentle on its tires? It doesn't go unnoticed, especially by the team that's not used to being beaten at their own game. And now, all eyes are on the FIA. Will they uncover something underhanded? Or is McLaren simply a step ahead, paying the price of innovation in a sport where suspicion is currency? Buckle up, because this story is far from over. Christian Horner, ever the sharp tactician and master of the political chessboard that is Formula One, had begun to cast his suspicions well before the engines roared to life in Miami. As far back as the previous season, he publicly floated the provocative theory that McLaren might be injecting water into their tires, a claim that, on the surface, sounded absurd, but would be monumental if proven true. The concept, while fringe to some, held weight in the technical community. Introducing water into the tires mid-race could theoretically help lower internal temperatures, delaying degradation and preserving grip. The suggestion was never validated, yet it planted a seed of doubt, one that, come 2025, had grown into a full-blown scandal. According to reporting from Auto Motor UND Sport, Red Bull didn't merely speculate, they acted. They are said to have initiated what insiders have dubbed a private investigation, aimed at gathering thermal imaging data of McLaren's rear brake assemblies. The goal? To uncover any irregularities invisible to the naked eye but glaring under infrared scrutiny. What they allegedly found only fueled the fire. The images reportedly showed unusual cold spots, areas within the brake drum appearing far cooler than they should during active racing conditions. For experienced engineers, such anomalies could hint at the presence of an active cooling mechanism. If McLaren had figured out a way to actively lower the temperature of the brake drums, perhaps by rerouting airflow or by employing highly conductive materials, it would dramatically affect tire wear and car balance. Here's why that matters. Brake drums sit adjacent to the wheel hubs, and as such, radiate heat directly into the tires. That heat raises tire pressure, alters grip, and accelerates degradation. If McLaren had managed to limit that heat transfer, they could maintain optimal tire performance longer, run more aggressive stints, and minimize pit strategy compromises. In the precision world of F1, that's not a small edge, it's the kind of game-changing breakthrough that wins championships. But here's the catch. Innovation doesn't always mean legality. And that's where the FIA had to intervene. Following McLaren's dominant 1-2 finish in Miami, the governing body launched an exhaustive inspection. Not the standard post-race check, but a deep, meticulous teardown of both Oscar Piastri's and Lando Norris's cars. Every major system was disassembled and scrutinized. The FIA examined telemetry, pulled data logs, and conducted forensic-style inspections of the brake systems. They likely even liaised with Pirelli for insight into tire behavior anomalies. The final verdict? Nothing illegal. No hidden cooling systems. No forbidden materials. No breaches of the technical rulebook. McLaren, officially, was in the clear. But don't think for a second that the matter ended there. While the FIA may have shut the file, the paddock's political battleground had just erupted. What began as a technical probe had evolved into a war of words and strategic maneuvering. And at the center of the counteroffensive stood Zak Brown, McLaren's straight-talking CEO. He wasn't content to merely brush aside the accusations. He came out swinging. Frustrated by what he saw as calculated disruption from Red Bull, Brown called for sweeping changes to how teams lodge complaints. His idea: if a team wants to accuse another of cheating, they should do it formally, on paper, through official channels, with a financial deposit. And if the protest fails, that cost should come out of their already tight budget caps. In short, put your money where your mouth is, or stay silent. And in true Formula One theatrical fashion, Brown didn't stop there. During the Miami GP weekend, he was spotted on the pit wall sipping from a water bottle labeled Tire Water. A tongue-in-cheek jab at Horner's earlier accusations. A showman's stunt, yes, but also a message, loud and clear. We see your games, and we're not backing down. In a sport where performance is measured in thousandths of a second, and where the line between genius and illegality is razor-thin, perception is everything. McLaren may have passed the inspection, but they now find themselves walking a tightrope between admiration and suspicion. And as for Red Bull? Whether they were genuinely concerned or just playing psychological warfare, one thing is certain: they've rattled the hornet's nest. And the 2025 season just got a whole lot more intense. McLaren is no longer playing defense. The team has shifted gears, standing tall and unapologetic amid the whirlwind of suspicion swirling around them. Meanwhile, Christian Horner, ever the seasoned operator, has found himself balancing delicately on a tightrope. In his post-race interviews, his tone was uncharacteristically reserved. "I'm not saying there's anything illegal on the car," he remarked, cautiously. But make no mistake, by that point, the damage had already been done. His previous insinuations had planted the seed of doubt. And in Formula One, sometimes that's all it takes. This is the unspoken battlefield of modern F1, where silence is a weapon and implications are often louder than accusations. Let's take a moment to zoom out. What's really happening behind the scenes? Formula One has always operated on two fronts. On the track, it's a war waged in fractions of a second. But off the track? It's a chess game of narratives, politics, and regulatory interpretation. Red Bull understands the power of suggestion. Merely implying that McLaren might be skating along the edges of legality was enough to trigger a formal investigation by the FIA. That subtle provocation forced their rivals to divert focus, brought the spotlight to McLaren's garage, and stirred unrest within the paddock. McLaren, in response, has had no choice but to be as transparent as possible. They've had to open up elements of their car design, publicly defend their engineering integrity, and carefully manage the media storm. Even if they've done nothing wrong, the ripple effects are real. Momentum can stall, concentration can fracture. In a title fight, even psychological turbulence can cost dearly. And let's not pretend this is happening in a vacuum. Back in 2024, when Red Bull seemed untouchable, it was McLaren and others who raised suspicions about their controversial front suspension geometry, particularly how it allowed Red Bull superior rotation through corners. Red Bull weathered that storm, but the precedent was set. When you're at the top, the spotlight never dims. Now the roles have reversed. McLaren is surging. Red Bull finds itself chasing shadows. The accuser has become the accused, and the political dynamics have flipped completely. Adding even more intrigue to the unfolding saga is Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff. Unlike Horner, Wolff has taken a firm public stance in support of McLaren. In a recent interview, he said, "I have absolutely no doubt these guys are operating within the rules." That kind of endorsement carries serious weight, especially coming from someone who's been on both ends of the controversy spectrum. It's not just a vote of confidence, it's a political isolation of Red Bull. If other teams begin to see Red Bull's campaign as nothing more than noise, or worse, as tactical manipulation, it could backfire spectacularly. And there's another theory, one that's been quietly making the rounds in technical circles. What if McLaren's supposed brake magic isn't a gimmick, but simply a result of superior airflow mastery? Instead of employing a band cooling mechanism or concealed system, McLaren may have simply developed a more refined method of channeling air through and around the brake assemblies. By optimizing how air interacts with the wheel rims and brake ducts, they could be managing heat dissipation in a way their rivals haven't cracked yet. Combine that with a finely tuned suspension setup and well-executed race strategies, and suddenly you have a car that doesn't just beat the competition. It does so while staying well within the legal boundaries. That's the paradox of Formula One. Every innovation teeters on the razor's edge between brilliance and breach. The same ingenuity that pushes a team to victory can invite scrutiny and suspicion. In the end, McLaren's masterclass in Miami remains intact. Oscar Piastri keeps his win. The MCL 39 has passed inspection. The scoreboard hasn't changed, but the tone in the paddock has. Now, the real questions begin. Will Red Bull double down and formalize their accusations? Will the FIA be pressured into re-evaluating technical guidelines? Will Zak Brown's call for stricter protest protocols gain traction? Let me know what you think in the comments, and buckle up. This season isn't cooling down anytime soon.